Hi there, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today I thought it would be good to do a project using the new Stampin' Up products that I got, and I showed you some of those, or all of the new ones that I purchased in the last week's haul video. So I'm going to be using this tropical sheet, which I know is not the latest collection of stuff, but I've been wanting, as I said to you in that original haul video, for this tropical chic set for ages, so I've been dying to use it. Now, as you can see, I've actually put the stickers on the back of the stamps. I did query about them in that haul video and questioned whether how sticky they were, how that would work, but actually it worked perfectly, so definitely recommend doing that, because as you can see, you can now actually see the design on your stamp there, so it makes it a lot easier for positioning. And whereas before you couldn't stick it back, once you put that sort of acetate on the stamp, you couldn't stick it to your stamp block, you can now. They've adjusted that. So I will put all the colours that I'm using, as always, on the blog post, so don't worry about what they are, just go on over to the blog post and it will list everything there for you. So what I've done on this one is I've taken the ink and I decided that for that first two leaves I wanted to do stamp off once and then stamp onto the actual cardstock, because I liked that slightly lighter look. On the second colour I liked the first stamp of it, the slightly darker colour, and I think it just varies, and I love the fact that you can get those two colours really from one stamp set. Now on the darker colour here I did do again just one stamp straight onto the ink, but you'll see there's sort of some stamps off and some not, and it actually worked quite well because I was able to use like the same colour for different leaves. Like there was the same colour as the first leaf, but because I'd stamped off on the first leaf it looked like a different colour leaf, but it still blended through really nicely. And then with these beautiful I'm assuming they're like a hibiscus type flower, I was able to get sort of two tones that again worked perfectly together, because actually they're the same colour, but I was able to get two different sort of effects with that. So I think that worked, or is going to work really, really well. So then for my sentiment, I wanted to use that with love, with much love, but I didn't want the and thanks. So I put that into my ink, and then I just wiped off with a baby wipe the any ink that went on the and thanks, and then I stamped it. And it just comes out pretty good, I think. And I used a lovely grey. I wanted something slightly softer. I felt that that would work better. Next, using the matching dies, I want to cut out some actual leaves with using the same coloured cardstock as my inks. Now, what I didn't do on the first time was I actually cut both the inside and the outside die, because that's normally what you need to do with these dies. But what I didn't appreciate was the inside part was actually the leaf that you want to cut out from your coloured cardstock, and the outside part is the part that you're going to use on your stamps. So just on all of the dies in that collection, that's how that will work. That said, I think that there's a possibility that the inside die will also cut out your stamped images, but just really, really close to the actual stamped edges rather than sort of like an outside part. So I think you could try that out and see how that works. But for me, I just cut it as you saw, with the outside die for the stamped ones and the inside for my coloured paper. And there they are, all done. I think they look absolutely gorgeous. I'm really pleased with those. So next I cut my sentiment, and I'm just cutting that into a rectangle. It ended up being approximately 2.5 inches wide by about 3/4 of an inch tall. I then wanted to cut a mat in the beautiful green to sit behind that white sentiment, so I ended up with that being about 1/8 of an inch taller and 1/4 of an inch wider, just so it was slightly wider on the two sides, which I think looked really effective. So now to my actual card base. I've got here 2 layers for the front, which is 5 by 5, so the white was about 1/4 inch down from that, so 4 3/4 by 4 3/4, and the green mat was about 1/8 of an inch bigger than the white mat. And then my card base was originally going to be 5 by 5, but for some strange bizarre reason I cut it at 11 inches long. So when I then scored it at 5 inches, I ended up with a card with the back being at 6 inches and the front being at 5 inches. So originally I was thinking, oh well, I'll just cut the excess off, and then as I was looking at it I was thinking, I don't know, this might be a happy accident, so I actually left it like that. Just to confirm, using Whisper White thick cardstock, I cut it at 5 inches tall by 11 inches wide. I then scored it at 5 inches, which gave me a card that's 5 inches high by 6 inches at the back and 5 inches at the front. So then, to make a feature of that, I decided to add a piece of the beautiful green to the inside. So I cut it to 5 7/8 and 4 7/8, so it was 1/8 of an inch smaller, and that was going to go on the inside back there. And then I took a piece of this beautiful pink, I cut it to approximately 1.5 to 2 inches, and then I cut it to exactly 5 inches so that it would create just a lovely little pink strip on the front inside edge there. Now to put the layers together, first of all I'm matting the white 5x5, well it's not quite 5x5, but for the front piece to the green. I'm not sticking that down yet to the front of the card. Next I put the green inside the card, and you can see now how that's going to be quite effective. And then I want to add the pink strips. So to do this, what you want to do is add a bit of tape onto the front edge of that white piece, and then a bit of tape to the opposite side of the pink piece, and I put a small amount of tape down the two sides of the pink, but you'll notice I didn't go all the way across, because obviously you don't want the tape to be on the part that's going to be poking out, because that wouldn't be so good. But by doing it that way, you've made sure you've stuck the front white edge and the back pink edge down, so you make sure that you get it all stuck down nicely. And now you can see how effective that is with that little bit of pink just added in there. It just adds a really nice edge to it. So next I want to add a bit of ribbon around that mat that we created, which is why I didn't stick it down straight away. This isn't Stampin' Up ribbon, this is just some ribbon I had in my stash, and I really don't know what it is, but I literally just cut a piece to size, put a bit of adhesive on the back, and then tucked the ends around to stick it down, and there it was done, and it looks really cool. But however, when I wanted to stick this to the front of the card, you could of course just use your tape or whatever, but I personally, because there is a little thickness to the ribbon, I find if you use the glue gel that it just, although you're still sticking it flat, it just allows for that tiny bit of thickness that the ribbon gives, and so you don't get any dipping sort of at top and bottom of your mat. It just sits nice and flat, so I personally think it just gives a nice, smooth, much better finish using the glue gel. So now we get to the fun bit, and that's adding all our leaves and flowers to the actual card. So what I do first is I lay them out. It's never 100% perfect, because obviously they're moving around, and obviously when you have glue you can hold them in position, but it gives you a rough idea. And then I photograph it, because then I can look back at the photograph and look at where I position things, because I tell you what, if you've got a lot of things like we have here, you will forget where you've put things. And then I'm gonna curve the leaves. As you saw there, I'm just using my bone folder, I'm just giving the leaves a bit of dimension, and then I'm using my glue gel in the bits that I want on the highest points. So basically the dips on the actual leaf, but they'll be the bits that are raised up when you put the leaf down on the card. I'm not really bothering to put glue on the actual low points, because there's enough glue in the high points to hold the leaf in position, and by putting the glue there it just holds those high points up so that it stops them from being pressed down. Once the card is completely dry and you go to post it, it will position that. As you can see there, I'm putting plenty in that high dip or curve just to really hold that up, and it will hold that leaf in position. Now obviously I'm not showing you every single leaf that I'm sticking down, I'm just giving you a little selection, because I think otherwise it will drive you nuts. It takes a little time, you want to go slowly, but basically I'm doing a layer at a time, just to build those leaves up nice and slowly and get the depth. Now obviously as you get higher up, you may find with some of them you need to put a bit more glue on. Now that's what's going to happen here with the flowers, because the center here is a lot lower. There's been nothing put in the center, so even though I'm going to put glue on the flowers as well, which I've also curved, I needed to put a big lump of glue gel in the middle there, because otherwise as soon as I put the flowers on, I couldn't put enough glue on each flower realistically to hold them up. It just wouldn't have been enough, so I needed to put something to stop them sinking into the middle, otherwise it just would have looked really flat and it would have defeated the point. So I think by doing it like that, it just works really well, but I still, as I said, put some glue on each flower. So the next thing I wanted to do was add some little centers to my little flowers here, and I found that I had these gorgeous little Stampin' Up glitter dot gem things, so I thought that I would use the actual yellow ones. I know it's not a colour we've used on here at all, but I thought it actually would be really nice and it would bring a little bit of additional colour. I think a lot of these kind of hibiscus type flowers do have yellow on them, so I thought that would be cool. They're really sparkly, and they do have self-adhesive glue on the back, but because I wanted to not push down onto my flowers, they're still wet. If I'd allowed them to dry, I think it would have been okay, but because it was still wet, I wanted to make sure that I could stick them down okay, so I just use a little dot of my glue gel again, and then I'm just popping those on. So then as a finishing touch, I just added 3 of these little glitter gems to the corner, and I thought it would be just nice to add a final little touch of these 3 little gems, but on this one I used the green instead of the yellow, and I think that went really, really well with it. Then lastly but not leastly, using my glue gel, but using it flat, and the reason I'm using the glue gel is just to give me some movement, so any wet glue would work for this. I'm just sticking down our sentiment that we created, and I'm just popping it underneath that leaf there, and I quite like how that just overlaps our sentiment just a little. It doesn't interfere with the actual writing, but it just makes it part of that design. I quite like that effect. So there it is done, and you can see now just how much dimension I've created, and how by curving the leaves it looks really effective, and also by using that glue gel it doesn't have this ton of white showing through from the sides, which I always think personally looks a lot better. So I think it was a nice happy accident that we got that extra piece to the right as you look at the card head on, with that extra width. I think that looks really effective. I really like that and how that turned out. I hope you have enjoyed making this card with me. As I said to you in the haul video, I've been dying to get this stamp set and die set for a long time. I don't know why, it just really appealed to me, and I can see how many different colours and different themes you could really achieve with this, but just changing up the colours and changing up how many leaves you use and stuff. I think it could look really different. So I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you like the finished card as much as I do, and as always I would love you to pop on over to the blog post. Don't forget that on there you'll see a ton of photos of the finished card, also all the links to the products used and other bits and pieces like colours used, etc., that we talked about. And I will link into that blog post as well the haul video for you, so if you did miss it then you can take a peek at that as well. Also, of course, I would love it while you're there if you would subscribe to my website. All that does is give you an email into your inbox every time I post a video. That's it, nothing else. I don't send you any junk mail or anything like that. It doesn't go to anybody else, it only sticks with me. So literally it only gives you an email every time I post a video, which means you'll be like the first to know, and you can then click on the link in that email and it will take you straight to the post so you can see it, and it just makes everything so much easier for you. And all you need to do to find that blog post is go to the paragraph below this video if you're on YouTube, click where it says show more, it opens up the paragraph, and there you'll find a link under the heading corresponding blog post. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye.
Sometimes you have to grow up, even if it's just for a day at a time, or a Saturday ride. Sometimes trees get taller